What would you do if you can pick between two candidates? One of them is working extremely hard for 10 hours a day, like every single moment, but they're really slow. They can't deliver high quality within a short amount of time. They can't react to emergencies and whatnot. The other one is around for, say, 8 hours a day or whatnot, and probably spends a couple hours a day just slacking and browsing around and chatting with colleagues, but they're fairly fast and they can react whenever needed, and they can multitask and they can solve problems, right? What I'm trying to allude to is that most people are aiming for the type of workers who are completely obedient to the process. People who completely respect the concept of working hours and spend all of their time in front of the screen doing nothing but, for example, reading code or documentation or whatever it is, or just browsing, sending emails. And actually ignore the people who may be spending fewer hours, technically speaking, but can keep their mind and their brain and their kind of brain capacity on sync with everything that the business needs as an organization. And just to give you an example, like we're talking about different forms of businesses, and every single business needs to survive whenever there's a critical situation. And critical situations happen, and that's kind of the best time you can identify your managers. That's the best time where you can find the people who you need and the roles that you really need for your business. So as a business professional myself, I'd always pick someone who may be spending an hour or even two over the course of the business day, just doing whatever stuff they want to, but people who are reliable enough to solve a business problem within a short amount of time. People who may be around after hours, people who may be able to take on and react upon a client emergency or something else that may happen across the business. So that's extremely important. And the reason I'm bringing this up is actually not my own team, even though we've had some interviews and people who we've considered whether we can kind of offer them a position of taskers or simply, ignore their application, just decline our offer because we don't believe that they can tackle scenarios or they're not interested in investing extra time or whatever it is. But I've been looking for an assistant for a while, and while I've been on the hunt, I have one or two tasks that are fairly easy to figure out whether someone's a good candidate or no. And those tasks are related to quick thinking. For example, I may ask them to compile a quick biographical profile of me. Just tell them, spend 30 minutes looking around me and sum up all of the information that you can find. Or spend, again, 1 hour just browsing my Quora profile and figure out what are the main topics I talk about, or what are the 5 top topics that we can build video collections on top of, or create a new playlist of videos, or something like that. Basic things that don't require any skills or know-how, basic skills that you can easily ask someone who's smart enough, even though they don't have kind of specific skills in be it development or management or whatnot, and just ask them to do something like that. So it's a really easy way to find people who always take the slow route. And the reason I'm mentioning that is for all of those scenarios that I've been using to kind of interview assistants, for all of those scenarios, I have recorded videos within usually 3 to 5 minutes, and it usually takes them up to 4 hours to prepare something like that. Just as an example, I have a podcast on WordPress, and like I asked them, do you have experience with WordPress? And they say, of course, we've built some websites, they've installed themes and whatnot. Like most assistants have, because WordPress is used by professionals and lots of amateurs and hobbyists, which is completely fine. Like I don't mind that for the moment. But I say, I need to discover like 3 or 4 topics for the next episodes of my podcast. So based on what you know about me, like they've already spent a day exploring me and researching me and whatnot, based on what you know about me and based on the topic of my podcast, look up and try to find additional topic ideas for my podcast. Like I give them a profile. This is the audience. This is the type of user. These are the types of topics that we don't cover there. And I also give them kind of a rough recap of how they can come up with ideas. Like Google, what are the problems that complex, large websites face, or something like that. Or look up other WordPress podcasts, or podcasts on web development, or podcasts on other relevant topics, or look up other, again, topics concerning the type of audience that we have, or search those on Quora, just look up the WordPress kind of topic or something else. Like, I pretty much give them the entire framework of how they can figure out the information they need and just come up with some topics. I also tell them, be fast, make sure that you communicate really proactively. Like, over communication is much better than under communication, right? Just come up with some suggestions, with some ideas as soon as freaking possible. We can communicate, we can bounce some ideas back and forth, and that's completely fine. So just this week I've interviewed 4 people. None of them took less than 4 hours to come up with something that's pretty much a basic search, opening 2 links and just compiling some topics. Because if you open like WordPress podcast, and like if you Google that online, you're going to find 2 listicles on top, listing about 10 different WordPress driven podcasts. When you open them, you see a list of the episodes, and you can basically just copy paste 5 titles or even 10 if you want from that specific list that cover the requirements, and you're good to go. It really takes 3 minutes. I have a video recorded for that. So that's just one example. Of course, this is really not that mission critical, but when you need most of the things, you really need them to happen within the corresponding timeframes. And normally when you assign the tasks to a specific professional on your team, you know what sort of pace they work with, right? You know that a given type of task takes them X amount of hours, and you do your project management process depending on those estimations, which again is completely fine. But when shit hits the fan, or roughly speaking, when something happens, there's an outage, there's downtime, there's a typo in a campaign, there's something else that happens, you need people to react quickly, identify the problem, find a shortcut to restore the problem as soon as possible, and then you can do all of the due diligence that you want once the problem has been solved. And those types of emergency situations are the types of tasks that we try to assign our people. Like, it's a 2-step question. First off, during interviews, we ask them a lot of logical questions. Most are behavioral driven, as you can imagine, for different sort of situations that our clients would come up with. So we try to assess the thinking process of those individuals. How would they react in those cases? How would they pick different solutions? And this measures 2 things. The first one is what's their skill set and their experience, of course, like whether they've dealt with those problems already. Or the second one is for the problems that they don't know, how would they tackle those particular problems? Are they going to look up on Stack Overflow or Quora or just Google or somewhere else? Are they going to ask a colleague or a manager or whatnot? Would they indicate a problem to their managers in the meantime so that it's clear that there's an actual business problem they have to deal with? So those are different ways to assess candidates over an interview in order to see whether they have any experience and how would they catch up with the necessary experience for the role. But the second more important thing is how would they act on emergencies? Like when they have a task that they need to do within the next 2 hours, and this task is usually a 10-minute task, how long would it take them? Now, we know that if it's a fairly unknown project or a weird problem, it won't take them 10 minutes. It probably will take 20, 30, 45 up to an hour. But if people pretty much leave for the day without having the task completed, without having indicated that there's a problem, we know for a fact that those people are hardly reliable. So we need to train them, we need to indicate the problem to them, and also we need to let them know that for a leadership position like a senior developer, project owner, technical lead, something like that, they won't really be able to step up and take the next level if they won't resolve that specific problem. And that's extremely important. So again, when hiring people, slacking is rarely a problem. Slacking is a problem only if there's a critical emergency and people still refuse to step up and support the business needs in that particular time. But aside from that, if you have someone who spends all day and all night at the office but can't react to an emergency and causes problems, for the most part, those people are more problematic than those that may be coming late and maybe leaving earlier, but whenever there is a problem, they can step up and make sure that everything is working. People who can still commit to deadlines and work upon kind of stressful situations, even if you have one of those once a month. Once a month is enough to lose a couple of clients if you have 2 outages at the same day for just some insane reason like AWS is being down, and be unable to communicate that to your clients. So that's it in a nutshell. Like if you're applying to a specific job, again, make sure that you're dependable, you're reliable, you're trustworthy if you want to step up in the hierarchy. Otherwise, you're just looking to occupy a specific seat at the office, and that's not extremely helpful to most organizations.